Hi everyone, I'm Sandhya. I'm your botany lecturer. In this video, we are going to discuss about ecology, plant ecology. So, what is ecology? Ecology is made up of two words: logy, eco. Ecology. Logy means study. Eco means environment. So, it is a branch of biology which deals with the interactions among organisms with their environment. Okay, interactions among environment, interactions among organisms and with their environment. With their environment. So, the branch of biology which deals with the interactions among organisms and with their environment is called as ecology. Then coming on to plant ecology. Plant ecology is nothing but it is the branch of ecology. It is the branch of ecology which deals with the abundance and distribution of the plants. Abundance and distribution of the plants. Abundance and distribution of the plants, the effects of environmental factors, and the interactions upon the abundance of plants and the interactions among the plants and between the organisms, between the plants and within the environment, and also the interactions among the organisms and between their environments, also among the interactions among the plants and with their environments. So, plant ecology is a branch of ecology which deals with the abundance and distribution of plants, effects of environmental factors with the plants, and interactions among the plants, between the plants, and with their environments is plant ecology. So, that is about the ecology and plant ecology. Coming on to who is called as father of ecology. Father of ecology is Alexander von Humboldt. Alexander von Humboldt. Then who is called as father of modern ecology? Father of modern ecology, he is nothing but Evelyn Hutchinson. Then father of ecology in India. Who is father of ecology in India? Father of ecology in India is Ramdeo Mishra. Father of ecology is Alexander von Humboldt. Father of modern ecology is Evelyn Hutchinson. Father of ecology in India is Ramdeo Mishra. Coming on to the introduction part. See, ecology means the organisms are there. At the same time, these organisms are showing the interactions with the environment. Okay, so that the organisms are showing the interactions with the environment. So, organisms are the biotic factors. The environment is the physical factor, or you can say abiotic factors. The environmental factors, ecological factors are the physical factors or abiotic factors. The organism part, the life part is called as the biofactors. So, they are interdependent on each other. The interactions are there between each other. So, the organisms are going to be dependent on the environment on the environment, not only for the survival. The organisms are going to depend on the environment not only for the survival but also for reproduction. That is mainly important. Okay, not only for the survival but also for the reproduction also. And the rotation of the earth around the sun and the tilt of the earth, it's an angle. This, because of the rotation and because of the tilt, what is happening, there is change in the intensity of the temperatures. Because of that, the seasons are going to occur. Okay, but because of that, the seasons are going to occur. And also there are some variations in the precipitation. Precipitation includes the snow and the rain also. So because of this, because of the variations in the precipitation, what happens, the areas, a particular land area or a particular community area, the land area is divided into desert, rainforest, and you can say tundra region, because of the variations in the precipitations, because of the variations in the temperature. The variations in temperature are occurring because of the rotation of the earth around the sun, around its own axis. See, rotation of the earth around its own axis and revolution of the earth around the sun, and tilt of there is some tilt of the earth to some angle also. Because of the tilt also, what is happening, there are variations in the temperature, in the intensity and temperature. So that's why the seasons are occurring. So this are all, because of all these regions, the earth, the area is divided into desert, tundra, and rainforest. So in detail we will study in some other time, but now we are going to study about the plant communities and ecological adaptations. Okay, so first we will study about adaptation. First we will study about the adaptations. See, adaptations means what? See, an organism is living in a particular environment, so that in that environment may be very much extreme in the sense very hot, very cold, but still the organisms are surviving. How are they surviving? They are surviving they are surviving such that they want to live. Okay, so they are living. They're coping with those extreme temperatures, humidity and rainfall. How they are making some adjustments. They're making some adjustments. Those adjustments can be morphological, physiological, or it can be behavioral also. So the morphological, physiological, behavioral adjustments of the organisms with their environment is called as adaptations. So they can be morphological, physiological, and behavioral adjustments of the organisms with the environment is called as adaptations. They can be temporary, they can be permanent, but mostly permanent modifications or changes occur or adjustments occur. Then because of these adjustments, the evolution has occurred. The evolution relationships can be established. Long evolutionary time also we can note down. Then if you take an example of a plant itself, Opuntia. So Opuntia is a plant which is going to grow in a very dry conditions where water is very scarce, but still it is surviving. It is surviving by storing the water in the form of mucilages. The leaves are transformed into spines. And as leaves are not there, as they're transformed into spines, the photosynthesis property has to be functioned by any other part. The stem becomes succulent and green in color, bears the chlorophyll and performs a photosynthesis. It's called as phylloclade. So here they are making some modifications just to survive in the extreme environmental factors. And takes for example, some plants can grow in the salinity soils also, the saline soils also. Such type of plants are called as halophytes. Where they're going to go in the salinities of the sea. They're called as halophytes. There are some plants can grow in the direction of sunlight. Which are called as heliophytes. And there are some plants which grow in shady areas, shady places, which are called as xeophytes. So like this we can classify the plants into different groups. But a scientist called Eugene Warming scientist called Eugene Warming has classified the plants into three categories. Has classified plants into three categories based on the dependence and relationship of plants to water. Based on the dependence and relationship of the plants to water. Based on dependence and relation of plants to water. They are of three types. Plants are of three types. Okay, the first one are the hydrophytes. The first types are called as the hydrophytes. They are nothing but the aquatic plants or water plants. Then the second one are called the mesophytes. Mesophytes. Third group is called as xerophytes. Xerophytes. They are also called as desert plants. Desert plants. First we'll deal with the hydrophytes. Hydrophytes nothing but the aquatic plants. These are the plants which grow in water. These are the plants which grow in water. Then they are again divided into five categories. Okay, five categories based on the mode of living in water. First one is free floating hydrophytes, where they are not in contact with the substratum at all. They are totally they have no contact with the soil at all, and they float on the water surface. Example: Pistia, Lemna and Salvinia. They have no contact with the soil or the substratum. They just float on the water surface. Like for example, if you take Pistia, the rosette of leaves will be there. This is the adventitious roots, like this. They just float on the water surface with no contact with the soil. So this is the Pistia, free floating hydrophytes. Next one is rooted hydrophytes with floating leaves. Rooted hydrophytes with floating leaves. This means example Nymphia and Victoria regia. That means they are attached to the substratum, and they have long petioles, and the leaves are floating on the water surface. Means like this, they are attached to the substratum, and the petioles will be coming up, and on the water surface, the big leaves are going to be there, like water lily, like that, lotus, like this. Okay, so the leaves are floating. That means the roots of these are fixed to the substratum, to the mud, and they have long petiolated leaves that floating on the water surface. Example Nymphia and Victoria regia. Then coming on to third type, submerged hydrophytes. Submerged hydrophytes, where they are suspended in the water. These are in no contact with the soil. Okay, they are just inside the water, but they do not come up. They're not attached to the water, to the substratum. Example Vallisneria. They are just suspended in the water. Example Vallisneria. Then submerged rooted hydrophytes. These are totally submerged. but they are attached to the substratum. These are totally submerged and attached to the substratum. Example is, I'm sorry, this is not Vallisneria, this is Hydrilla. Submerged suspended hydrophytes are Hydrilla and Urticularia. The submerged rooted one is Vallisneria. Careful, okay? Both are submerged, but difference is that Hydrilla is suspended, Vallisneria is rooted. Okay, it is attached to the substratum. Then amphibious plants. These are the plants which can grow on the water surface or on the land itself. Just nearby the water and the land. These plants live partly in water and partly in air. Example, Sagittaria. Example, Sagittaria, Typha are the examples. Okay, partly in air and partly in water. These are the 5 categories of hydrophytes. So they are living in this mode of water. Okay, so coming on to how these plants are living in water. I mean, these plants are different with that of the terrestrial plants, with that of the land plants. So how are they surviving in water? What are the modifications? What are the adaptations? Let us learn now. Ecological adaptations we will learn now. So because of the surplus of water, surplus means more amount of water surrounded by the plant bodies, there is not much importance of root system. Roots are mainly for absorption of water and minerals from the soil. But here surplus of water is there, so roots are of secondary importance. But still roots are there, but they are poorly developed. But they are poorly developed. Overall development of the roots is very poor, usually poor. Then sometimes it may be absent, poorly developed. But in some submerged leaves, in submerged plants, the leaves play the role of roots and matter. Okay, they are totally absent. In submerged plants, the roots are totally absent. The leaves in the submerged plants play the role of the roots and matter. Then in case of rooted hydrophytes are also there, no? They're also there, but it is very poorly developed. In those, the root cap is actually absent. But in some amphibious plants, root caps are present. And in some plants, root caps are totally absent. Root pockets are present instead. Root pockets are present. Then, if suppose roots are present rooted hydrophytes are there, no? So in those rooted hydrophytes, the roots are present. So if the roots are present, also they are fibrous roots, adventitious roots, and reduced in length, and they're unbranched and poorly branched. Then coming on to stem is very long. If in case of freely floating hydrophytes are there, no? So stem is long and slender. And here the leaves are very thin, and they are long ribbon shaped. They are long ribbon shaped, long linear or fleshy leaves. Sometimes that they are dissected like that. So the leaves are very thin, either long and ribbon shaped, long and linear, or fleshy and dissected. Then the floating leaves are there, isn't it? The floating leaves in Nymphia and Victoria regia, they are very large and having a very, very wide flat surface. And this flat surface, the upper surface is coated with wax. Like if a water drop falls on the leaf, it floats because the upper surface is coated with wax. These are about the morphological adaptations. Mainly we can talk about roots, stems and leaves. The roots are of secondary importance. They are usually absent in submerged plants, but if they are present, they are fibrous, adventitious and unbranched. They are poorly developed because sometimes the leaves will be performing the function and surplus of water is there. Then stem are very long and slender. Leaves are very thin, they are long, ribbon shaped, linear, fleshy and dissected. And some floating leaves are covered, the upper surface is covered with the wax and matter. And the root caps, coming on to roots, root caps are actually absent. But in some rooted hydrophytes, in some amphibian plants, mainly in amphibious plants, root caps are present. Then in some plants like floating hydrophytes, the root caps are absent, root pockets are present. Like that. That is about the morphological adaptations. Coming on to the anatomical, inside the tissue level adaptations. Anatomical adaptations. So if you see the anatomical adaptations, the epidermis is composed of thin wall cells and mainly perform the absorption and assimilation when some cells contain the chloroplast. And above the epidermis, the cuticle is totally absent in this hydrophytes. Is totally absent in the submerged parts. Mainly the cuticle is totally absent in the submerged parts. So here the cuticle is totally absent in submerged plants. If it is present also, it's present in the form of a very thin film where the parts are exposed to atmosphere, but usually it is totally absent. Why? Because cuticle is useful for protection and to escape the water outside the plant body. But here they are having amount of water, no? That's why it is totally absent in submerged parts. But the parts which are exposed to atmosphere, there a thin film is present. Coming on to epidermis, it is very thin and perform the function of absorption and also assimilation when the cells contain the chloroplast. Coming on to stomata are totally absent in submerged parts, but in few parts, in few parts which are exposed to the floating leaves are there, no? So in those parts, the epistomatous stomata are present. Epistomatous means on the upper surface the stomata are present. They're actually totally absent in submerged plants, but in floating leaves they are present as epistomatous, and they perform the function of diffusion. The cell walls will be useful for the exchange of the gases. There, for the exchange of the gases, the cell walls perform the function of diffusion. Then and main important thing, all these hydrophytes are very flexible. Like along with the water currents, they move. The leaves, the stem, the petiole, everything will be moving. Why? Because these particular hydrophytes are having the parenchyma. Means parenchyma, the parenchymatous tissue filled with the air and water. Air spaces are there, which are useful for the gaseous exchange and helpful for buoyancy, floating. So this parenchyma is a tissue which is present in all hydrophytes, which perform the function of buoyancy and also for gaseous exchange. The mechanical tissues are very poorly developed. Because there is no need of mechanical, because they are either suspended or floating. So no need of mechanical tissues at all. And xylem is also poorly developed. Xylem is a water connecting vascular tissue. So that is also poorly developed. That is about the hydrophytes. Coming on to mesophytes now. Mesophytes are those plants which are growing in the areas where there is no scarcity, where there is no abundance of water. In mesic conditions, the plants are going to grow. In these, the soil is having the pore spaces is having balanced condition of water and air spaces and gases and water. Balanced condition of the water and the air spaces, gases are present. So this particular mesophytes and mesophytes like forest, all the trees in the forest and the crop plants, they all come under mesophytes, like wheat, barley, maize, all will be coming under mesophytes. The land plants where there is no scarcity, where there is no abundance of water. So they can be divided into grasslands, tropical plants, temperate forest, and they are all mesophytes only. Coming on to xerophytes. Coming on to xerophytes. Xerophytes are those plants which grow in xeric conditions or dry conditions. Such type of plants are nothing but desert plants. The plants which grow in xeric conditions or dry conditions or arid regions. These plants are also again divided into three types. Ephemerals are actually annuals. Okay, they are going to live for a very short period of time, and they're going to escape the droughts and matter. So they are called as drought escapers, or drought evaders. They are going to live for a very short period of time, like 3 to 8 weeks, where the water is available. Like monsoon season, they are going to grow. In the drought season, or in the summer season, they are going to die. So they are annuals, and they are the drought escapers, drought evaders. They are going to live for only short period of time. So very good example is Tribulus. Then coming on to succulents. These plants are very intelligent. Intelligent in the sense they are going to grow throughout the season. Throughout all the seasons they are going to grow. But these plants are going to store the water. Whatever water is available for them, they are going to store the water in the form of mucilage and water. In the form of mucilage. Like if you take the aloe, the mucilage is present in the leaves. If you take opuntia, it is present in the stem, and the leaves are reduced to spines. The stem bears the chlorophyll and performs the photosynthesis. These are the succulent. They store the water in the form of mucilage. Large quantity of water is absorbed during rainy season, and they store in the parts in the form of mucilage. So very good examples: opuntia, aloe, and asparagus. Opuntia, aloe, and asparagus are the examples. Coming on to the non-succulents. Non-succulents are the true xerophytes. True xerophytes in the sense they are like stubborn things. They are going to survive in all conditions without storage also. Okay. These are going to store. Okay. But these are the plants which do not store also, but still they are going to survive. They are perennials. And going to grow throughout the season, throughout the year, for prolonged period of time. They are true xerophytes. In extreme drought also they can survive. Example is casuarina. Coming on to now adaptations. Adaptations are again divided into morphological and anatomical adaptations. First we will deal with morphological adaptations. Morphological adaptations of xerophytes. Morphological adaptations of xerophytes. Okay, first we will deal with roots. As water scarcity is there, they have to absorb whatever water is available in any lower part of the soil. So the roots will go deep into the soil wherever the water is there, and from there they are going to absorb the water. So the roots are very well developed. They are very well developed. Okay, the roots are very well developed. They are very well developed because they are going to grow in water deficient conditions. And the aerial organs, the leaves are reduced to spines or any other structures to reduce the transpiration. Transpiration means loss of water in the form of water vapor from the plant body. So to reduce the transpiration, the leaves and some aerial organs are modified. So the roots are very well developed. So in these cases, the roots are very well developed, and they go deep into the soil. The root hairs, the root caps, and the root caps are also very well developed. Root hairs and root caps are very well developed. Coming on to the stem. Stem here, as the water deficiency is there, suppose the tree or the plant is big, it must bear leaves also. So in order to if it must bear leaves, and also water loss also will be there. So in order to reduce the transpiration rate, the stem is stunted. And it grows stunted. It grows to a limited growth, and there are no leaves and water. The leaves are reduced to spines in order to reduce the transpiration rate. Okay, they are stunted, woody, hard, and covered with thick bark. And the stems are usually covered. If the stems are also present, they are usually covered with hairs or waxy coatings. The leaves are very much reduced. Here the leaves are very much reduced. Very much reduced, scale-like spines to reduce the rate of transpiration. This is about the morphological adaptations. Coming on to anatomical, means the tissue level adaptations. The tissue level adaptations, if you take, what can you say? The first one is the cuticle. The cuticle is having very thick, very thick cuticle. Cuticle is very thick. Okay, cuticle is very thick in order to reduce the rate of transpiration. And the epidermis also is having the silica crystals in order to reduce the transpiration. Silica crystals are present, and in some it is multi-layered epidermis also. In some hydrophytes it is multi-layered epidermis also. In order to withstand the dry conditions. Okay, and the stomata also they are usually confined to lower epidermis. They're not on the upper surface. They are present in the lower epidermis. They are hypostomatous. Hypostomatous stomata. Sometimes sunken stomata also. The stomata are present, but they are deeply seated. Sunken stomata are also present in some plants. Then here in this case, mechanical tissues are very strong. Why? Because they have to withstand the desert conditions, the wind blowing, everything, no? So the mechanical tissues are very well developed. The mechanical tissues are very well developed. And if you take the vascular tissues are also very well developed, especially the xylem is very well developed. This is about the xerophytes. This is about the plant communities and ecological adaptations. Thank you.